Today, I'm speaking with renowned technology leader Ron Lichty, where we discuss a common and frustrating gap: why software teams often lack clarity into how their work truly impacts outcomes. Ron will share with us his wisdom on why this disconnect happens and how leaders can better inspire a unified vision. Enjoy the conversation. All right, Ron, I have been so looking forward to diving into this conversation with you to understand your perspective and experience and expertise on the impact and contribution agile product teams, software delivery teams, specifically can bring to their organizations. And as we've been building up to this conversation and talking about the different facets of what teams and leaders need to understand, you highlighted, first off, the importance of understanding why software teams really need to understand the core of what they're focused on solving for. And I'd love for you to share with us a little bit more about how you think about that and what that means from your perspective.
I think it's critical. So I think it's critical for everybody in a software team to be thinking about the customer and making an impact and the impact that we can make, whether it's on the customer or whether it's on the world. That impact thing is so impactful on all of us, on every member of the team, and the connection between customers and impact in the world is hugely motivating for software developers, for testers, for designers, for product managers, for everybody on software product teams. I think it's I so often see. So as a consultant, I drop into whether it's an interim VP of engineering or to do an assessment of what can make a difference on a team. I too often see developers who don't know the why, who haven't made that connection, who aren't clear on the work that they're doing, making a difference in the world, making a difference to customers, making a difference to users. And that connecting the dot, one of the things as an engineering leader, one of the things that's critical is that we connect the dots between the work that every individual in our team is doing and the impact that they're making.
So when you're working with these organizations, I'm curious, do you see that issue of why being the fact that maybe the organization doesn't understand it, or the culture hasn't brought that understanding to the teams to understand that and connect it to their day-to-day work?
I think it's the culture, and it's the culture that's got to do with us as coming out of engineering, us coming out of engineering environments. When I looked at sales years and years and years ago, I looked at sales, and there's always a mantra in sales that you've got to say it 7 times or 9 times. Talk to any salesperson and they'll tell you they've got to repeat the message some number of times, and it might be 17, or it might be 13, or it might be 7, but you've got to repeat the message that number of times in order to make the sale. And the notion that we all have is, I'll just tell the engineers what it is we're doing once, and they'll get it. And that it doesn't translate. People don't take it away once. They need that 7 times or 9 times or 13 times or 17 times. They need to hear that connection, and they need to hear the specific connection between the work we're doing and the impact. And I think way too often we swim in, we in leadership swim in, here's the thing we're going to do. And we spent days, weeks, months thinking about this impact we're going to make. And meanwhile, our teams were off working on something else. And now they're coming into it, and we just communicate it once and think, okay, we're done. Once and done. And it's just not true.
Yeah. One of the things that I certainly run into is leaders and teams as they adopt agile practices or they aspire to be more agile as an organization. They all seem to have very different definitions of what agile means, how to be successful in implementing agile within their culture. Can you share from your experience being an expert in agile how this why is so critical to really being able to develop an agile and mature organization that is really able to embrace that practice?
So, I've I counted last year. I've in addition to being a VP of engineering, I trained teams, and I also train executive teams in how to be more effectively agile. And I always work with I always try to work with complete teams, with developers and testers and product managers and designers, the team, so that they have conversations with each other about what agile means for them. Because you're absolutely right. To take any 10 agile organizations, you're going to see 10 different processes, and ideally, they all have that same foundational same foundational mindset of being agile. And they've talked with each other, and they've got that team building exercise of talking with each other, that chartering exercise of talking with each other about what it is that we're going to create and how it is we're going to do that. And agile practices are there really to support the mindset, to support the being agile piece. There's so much agile theater out there of, well, we'll just do some practices and we'll be agile. And agile is really about creating best teams. It's about creating great teams. And if we can come together and understand what impact we as a team are trying to make, that's a core functionality to being an effective software development team. Agile just makes us more effective as a software development team because it's about teamwork. It's about psychological safety. It's about respect. It's about trust. It's about effective teams, because software development's a team sport. And what we want to do in software development is start off a project with a chartering phase in which we really dig into, what's this thing we're going to build together, and what's the impact that it's going to have, and why do we want to do this?
So one of the things that I've seen, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this, is that when I see teams that are struggling with agile and or being able to adapt and pivot because, pressures externally to the business have changed, that there's this disconnect that happens between product outcomes and that or what we're building and the actual impact on the customer. So how do you help teams reconcile that as they say, we need to go solve this problem, we need to go achieve this thing, for them to really take ownership of this idea of the things that they can control and the outcomes that they produce with the product versus the outputs, and really focus on how those outcomes lead to the success of in making that impact for customers.
I think one of the things we need to do is we need to take developers and testers and not just product managers and designers, but members of the whole team along to see our users, to see the problem that they've got, and then to bring us all together in designing the solution, in designing that outcome. And it's not about one person coming up with the best thing. The people who are in the code have ideas and insights into how we can best deliver how we can best deliver outcomes for that problem that sometimes are way simpler, sometimes they're way more complicated, and we need to have conversations with each other about what's appropriate.
Yeah, sometimes I've run into this I mean, first of all, I couldn't agree with you more, but I see sometimes the pushback of, well, our engineering resources are limited. We understand that maybe we should bring them more into the upfront parts of the process to understand the problem space before we ask them to start solving problems. But there's this mentality of we just need to ship faster. We need to get things done. And then what I've experienced anyhow is that a lot of times the solution isn't necessarily the right solution. They end up working on the wrong things at the wrong time instead of really achieving that impact that you were talking about. What has been your experience with that? Do you see that as a common thread and in your experience as well? And if so, how do you help people navigate that?
Yeah, so I think the critical thing is making sure that we're building the right thing, and it's just what you said. Henry Ford apocryphally once said that if he'd asked his customers what they wanted, they would have said they wanted a faster horse. No one's been able to find that quote, so that's an unquote. But Steve Jobs for sure did say that if he had asked users, none of them would have said, I want a Macintosh. None of them, except maybe the 10 people who'd ever used a Xerox Star, would have said, I want a Macintosh. They probably would have said, oh, I'd like an easier to use, easier to learn DOS, because that's what all of them were using at the time. And so we have to together imagine a better future for our users, for our customers, for the world. And it's not one person who gets to do that. I mean, Steve Jobs had the insight that what he saw at Xerox was a leap forward from DOS, from that textual interface driving an operating system, and then said, and we need it to be better. And all of his engineers and all of his designers, they were all working on how can we make that better? How can we improve that outcome for users? And I don't think there was anyone to whom you would say, you've got to build exactly this thing. It's no, you need to build this solution. And the solution is a more transparent, more easier to learn, more easier to use computing experience.
I love that example. I'm a big fan of those stories because we can learn so much from those industry giants and their successes and their failures. And certainly Steve Jobs' story has a mix of both, and it shows that the importance of really connecting with human need in order to drive the success of good software.